You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
You're listening to Mission Log the Orville, an episode-by-episode discussion of the adventures of the crew of the USS Orville.
Welcome to another episode of Mission Log the Orville. This week, a happy refrain. The one where Claire, gives Bortus a mustache and attends the Union Symphony with Issac. We'll listen for meanings, morals, messages, and to see if the episode aligns with the Roddenberry Star Trek philosophy. I'm Jessica Lynn Verdi.
And I'm Mike Richards. Mission Log the Orville is a conversation that depends on your participation. Share your thoughts, ideas, and tell us what we missed at ML_the Orville on Twitter, Mission Log Pod on Facebook. You can email us at missionlog-theorville at roddenberry.com. And if you're watching this on the Roddenberry YouTube channel, hit like and subscribe. And remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode. Now here's Jessica with the recap.
A happy refrain. Dr. Finn is busy at work on a research paper when she hits a snag and requests Isaac's help with revisions. Before he arrives, Bortus asks the doctor to make him a mustachioed man, based off a totally not a joke suggestion by Gordon. Claire reluctantly agrees to stimulate his upper lip hair follicles just as Isaac enters the medical bay, banana in hand. He deftly helps Claire with her revisions and leaves shortly thereafter, but not before giving her the banana because she gets hangry at this time of day, and also noticing that she changed her hairstyle. Act 1. Bortus enters the bridge donning his freshly grown mustache, and the crew is as supportive as they can be. Dr. Finn arrives reminding the crew that her son Ty's piano recital is this evening, and that their attendance would not only mean a lot to Ty, it would mean a lot to his teacher, Isaac. After Ty's wonderful performance, Claire finds Isaac observing the after party rather than enjoying himself. Despite Isaac's emotional limitations, he is able to tell Claire that she should be very proud of Ty. Claire seeks some desperately needed girl talk from Lieutenant Kelly, and you're going to need a big glass of Chardonnay to hear what it's about. Claire has feelings for Isaac. Even though Isaac isn't capable of actual love, Claire can feel his warmth. Kelly advises Claire that she should go for it, but do her best to protect herself. Claire asks Isaac to join her as her date to the Union Symphony that is playing on the ship next Friday. And when Isaac realizes this is a significant opportunity to collect data, he agrees. Isaac seeks the advice from the professional ladies' man himself, John Lamar. The dudes are shocked, no one more than Yaphet, when he says the date is with Dr. Finn. Lamar and Gordon run to gossip with the bridge crew, who react with varying degrees of shock. Dressed to impress and flowers in tow, Isaac picks up a ravishing Dr. Finn for their date. Act 2. As they head to the performance, Claire tells Isaac that she's nervous. Excited, but nervous. Isaac suggests that she should go home, but Claire assures him that she's fine. The entire crew has come to enjoy the orchestra, even Clyden and Bortus, who is still donning a mustache, much to Clyden's chagrin. The orchestra delights by opening with an upbeat version of Singing in the Rain, and their electricity is in the air. At dinner, Claire tells Isaac that it's coincidental they played that song, since she was just realizing that the one thing she misses on Earth most is rain. As she continues to explain, we learn that Isaac has downloaded all of Claire's personnel file so that he could accurately replicate her favorite Earth restaurant, as well as know everything about her so that he could be more efficient on the date so that it would conclude sooner. Claire explains that getting to know the person is part of the excitement of a first date, so she begins to ask him questions about himself. If his mission is to collect data on humans in order to see if his people, the Kalon, will like to join the Union, he must have some data about Dr. Finn himself. And when she asks what his data suggests about them, he doesn't understand the question, and she drops that line of questioning. Isaac escorts Claire home, and before she turns in for the night, she goes in for the first date kiss. Of course, unreciprocated physically by Isaac, but leaving him and us to wonder if he actually did feel something. Act 3. The bridge crew is anxious for deets on the date, but Isaac is confused. He does explain, however, that Dr. Finn wanted him to be more spontaneous, and after a bizarre explanation of Ed's baking skills, Isaac is advised to surprise her and be more in the moment. This advice leads Isaac to showing up at the foot of Claire's bed donning a freshly baked cake at 3 a.m. in the morning. Surprise! Claire and even her children are confused and alarmed. She explains to Isaac that this was a mistake. She can't even kiss him. She asks for things to go back to the way they were, and Isaac accepts this and leaves. After seeking more advice from the love dude himself, Lamar, Isaac is prepared to win Claire back. He invites her to the simulator. She walks into the same restaurant where they had their first date. And before Claire can resist, Isaac initiates a simulation. And before her very eyes, the cold exterior of a Kalon turns into the warm exterior of a handsome human man. Act 4. Not only can they kiss now, Isaac deleted her personnel file from his memory so he can actually get to know her. Date 1, take 2. She explains to him yet again about Baltimore, her longing for rain, and his genuine interest is winning her over. She reaches over the table to kiss him, and it is magic. When Isaac says that she may kiss him again, she instead asks the computer to simulate her quarters. It's time for something. She sure did. It's time for something a little more than just kissing. In typical dating fashion after sex, Claire is falling for Isaac, and Isaac is ready to break the relationship up. Lamar, shocked but willing to give advice, tells Isaac that if he wants to end things with Claire but doesn't want to hurt her, he has to get her to break up with him. This will end really well. Claire returns to her quarters after work to find Isaac playing the role of thick-headed male to perfection. She is aghast, and when she asks him why he's behaving in this way, it becomes clear that he's trying to end the relationship because, as he puts it, their sexual encounter was the completion of his research. This sends Claire over the edge, and she grants Isaac's wish to no longer be together. Act 5. Of course, everyone knows about what happened, but instead of addressing it directly, the crew passive-aggressively talks about how horrible Claire had been treated around Isaac. We see Isaac process this. Claire is drinking in her sorrows in her private simulation, but is disturbed by Norm MacDonald, Yaphet, who is hoping to be there for her rebound. He's created a human version of himself, but this does not please Claire. When Isaac arrives to Claire's quarters for Ty's piano lessons, she tells him that he has been replaced and that she does not want to see him any more than necessary. Of course, Isaac doesn't fully understand, but Claire has set her boundaries and he respects them. An error in calculation on the bridge by Isaac is cause for alarm and necessitates him to run a diagnostic on himself promptly. Ed follows to ask if he's sorted things out, and Isaac has learned that part of his programming is not functioning properly because his algorithms are used to Dr. Finn's presence. Ed says that Isaac might just be the first robot in history to fall in love. While this may not be 100% accurate, there is nothing left to do but win back the girl. Ed tells Isaac to be creative. Claire is called to the bridge, but incorrectly assumes it was the captain. Isaac called her. He begins playing Gene Kelly's Singing in the Rain and activates a program to simulate rain on the bridge. He tells Claire that he would like to attempt a committed relationship with her, that he functions better with her than without her. This wins her over, and he wins back the girl.
Oh my gosh. And just like Claire Finn, you changed the configuration of your hair.
You notice.
I did. Looks very nice.
Thank you so much.
And very nice job on the recap. And I love that I don't read it beforehand. I mean, we just kind of trade notes sort of right before the show starts. So it's just kind of a nice surprise. And watching you perform that, I would say.
Sure.
It's more than just a reading. It is a performance. I enjoy that very much.
I'm so glad. Yeah, it's definitely me while I'm watching it, recapping it, and basically infusing it with my own opinions for sure about what's happening.
Yeah, so much on the recap I want to comment on, but we'll get to that.
We have a whole episode to do that.
Yeah, if I may, this episode was written and directed by Seth MacFarlane. Lots of music. John Debney and Joel McNeely, who normally alternate scoring duties, both apparently had the week off, and this one was scored by Andrew Cotty, who we last saw as only other to date. Credit with the Orville is with the New Dimensions, the music for that episode. But he'll be back for 2 more episodes in season 2, and who knows about season 3? We'll find out here starting March 10th. Singing in the Rain was not sure. I always thought that song came from the movie. That song inspired the movie. Movie came out in 1952. The song came out in 1929. Lyrics by Arthur Freed.
I did not know that.
By Nacio, a.k.a. Ignacio Herb Brown. And the conductor of the symphony, the Union Symphony, on the Shuttle Bay floor, was played by Mark Graham, who's the head of music preparation on the show.
Oh.
So an actual cast member played that role.
Crew member.
Yeah, crew member.
I figured this was definitely a conductor. I didn't recognize him. So that's pretty cool.
And I looked that up on purpose because I didn't know. I figured it had to be somebody with some musical chops.
I bet you half those people are, if not all of them, are the people that record the music for the actual show too.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yep. And you pointed out in the recap the versions sung on the bridge. Apparently all of the equipment on the bridge is waterproof, and that was sung by the late, great Gene Kelly, who you can see in his final performance before he retired in the classic 1980 film Xanadu.
I never saw Xanadu, nor did I know he was in it, so...
I watched Xanadu for the first time a couple of months ago. Absolutely loved it. Loved
Did you?
everything about it.
Wow.
Cannot speak more highly of it. It was hilarious in points that I don't think were supposed to be.
Sure.
It was uplifting. The music was fun. I loved everything about it. It was so 1980. So 1980 that the titular Xanadu was actually a roller skating rink. Yeah.
Oh.
That's how 1980 it was.
That makes a lot of sense, though.
Yeah, and this episode aired in January 31st, 2019, and some similarities between this episode and the Star Trek Next Gen episode, In Theory, where Data dates a member of the Enterprise D at her sort of, she was crushing on him, much in the same way that Claire was sort of crushing on Isaac. And that was written by Joe Menosky and Ronald D. Moore. Joe Menosky joining the Orville in season 2.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm learning so many names in this world. It's very exciting.
Yeah, the episode was rated very high. Was tied with If the Stars Should Appear in Majority Rule for the third highest rated episode up to that point. And your little buddy playing piano. Kai, how do you say his last name?
Kai Wenner, or
Wenner?
Wenner. Yeah, Wenner, I think.
Wenner, yeah, that makes sense. Performed the song himself. There was some, the director of photography was like, how do you want to play this? Do we want to get like a hand model in there to play the piano and then cut scene to the actor like they often have to do on film? No, not with Kai Wenner. He just sat down and cranked out the music all by himself.
You can tell. You can tell he's playing it too.
100%.
And because they won't show the hands as purposefully as they did if the actor can't really do it. But it really was impressive, and it was a moving song and a good performance. So yeah, I was super proud of him too. I just want to pause on the 8.4 rating of If the Star Should Appear and Majority Rules as the two other highest ratings.
Not highest, tied for third.
Understood.
Yeah.
Great.
So there was a number 1, there was a number 2, and then these 3 came in.
Or tied for third.
Tied for third.
Great. Now, because here's what I'm trying to say. Those two, If the Stars Should Appear and Majority Rule are fine, but I think you and I both have opinions like, or at least there's some good, I don't know. Anyway, this episode is one of my favorite. It's not my favorite.
Cannot wait to talk more about it. I think If the Stars Should Appear is much better than Meh for me. I think that's one of my favorites.
That's fair.
And however, it's just there's just all different things. I think Majority Rule and If the Stars Should Appear both had kind of maybe very significant social issues they were looking at. The ability to believe data kind of and believe empirical evidence over what you've been taught or maybe preconceived notions. And Majority Rule obviously dug into social networks and the traps that those have with them. So in this one, as Seth put it himself, I wanted to do a big time Hollywood love story with that ended in Singing in the Rain. So that's the great thing about being the creator of a show is you get to do what you want. And it was done. I think it was done. Oh, we'll talk about whether it was done well later or not. But you mentioned, I'm just trying not to skip to the end. We got to leave some suspense.
I understand.
Got to leave some suspense.
I respect your opinion.
So the first thing when I saw Isaac walking into sickbay with the banana, and Claire said, "Why are you holding a banana?" I was fully expecting him to say for scale.
Mike. For scale.
For scale.
Oh, God. I guess we don't know how fully functional he is, right?
Well, we find out later. At least hollow.
The holodeck, I think I don't know that we can apply the same logic to the holodeck.
Yes. Yeah,
because it does.
I think photons and force fields can do an awful lot.
Clearly. But that does, it's good. That's a good callback to, there was no malfunction, no extreme fat malfunctions when Ed goes, don't brag about it.
Yeah. Did sparks fly? There were no malfunctions. You don't have to brag about it.
Exactly. It's so funny.
It's not that common. It doesn't happen to everybody, and it is a big deal.
It is a big deal. It was so good. See, again, friends, all the time.
Exactly. So, since when does Kelly not drink during work hours?
I think she has to say that to the doctor.
Yeah.
I think she has to say that to the doctor. I think if it's like her and Ed, she's like I don't know. I don't know that we see her sloshing a drink back all the time.
No, we don't. But and again, drinking with Ed is probably different because they can kind of keep that between the two rather than setting an example for somebody else. Also, air date January 19th. Maybe it was a New Year's resolution not to drink during work hours anymore.
That very well could be the case.
That was kind of a thing. But I do love the fact that it was like, hang on, 2 glasses of Chardonnay.
It was a good joke. I will say Chardonnay is the tackiest wine in my mind. It reminds me so much of all the Valley moms that I grew up around, and it just is. It's been ruined for me.
Tackier than rosé.
Rosé is actually just delightful and enjoyable.
Good. I'm glad.
It's just like a sweet drink. But Chardonnay is like, oh, okay, honey, let's go pretend to be rich housewives.
Let's open up a box of Chardonnay.
Well, listen, I'm not going to say no that boxed wine can be just fine. It's the Chardonnay aspect of the whole thing. It how the first alcohol that made you sick is probably the last alcohol you'll ever go back to. Yeah. Just my connotation with Chardonnay. It was so perfect, exactly like girl talk glass of wine or whatever. But yeah, Chardonnay evokes a lot of emotions out of me.
What'd you make? There's that little scene of Gordon trying to get John Lamar to soup up the Orville. I'm just saying if it could be a little more responsive when I step on the gas. That seemed to be sort of out of nowhere. Did you get anything out of that?
I think yes. Because you do expect maybe like we're getting a plot line C out of that. It's like that kind of opener. I think when we get another visitor in a future episode, it might be like
planting a seed, if you will.
Yeah, because a very light seed, but in reality, it's just so that Gordon could be down on the bridge and be there for Isaac to have boy talk, and it's the same reason that the New Zealand girl, whatever her name is there. Tala is there just to get an exam, but then that means so that Kelly can have, so that Claire can have girl talk with Katari and Kelly.
Yeah.
It's just for function over form.
Yeah, I thought that scene could have used hey, make sure you get into the environmental simulator a couple of days a week and practice in high gravity so that you don't end up like our last security chief.
There's a certain, it certainly could have said that, right?
It certainly could have.
Now, we have to assume behind the scenes on the Orville that has been addressed.
I hope so. I just hope they're not saying, you're so much better than the last one, because that would be sad.
I don't know. We'll see again in future episodes how well she fares. But yeah, it was odd. But again, we also remember how you said, did Gordon decide to not continue pursuing the captain role or the command track?
Certainly doesn't seem like it.
It doesn't. I think he's just I'm a flyer. I fly the ship and I want to have fun. So that possibly is another reason why he's down there trying to soup it up.
Exactly. He's going to, for many reasons. But yeah, he could just be very fulfilled where he is. John said the Orville makes 1,000 trillion calculations per millisecond. There's a word for 1,000 trillion. It's quadrillion.
Quadrillion. So why didn't he just say quadrillion?
I don't know. I mean, I had to look it up, so maybe many people don't know what it is. So in the UK, they say 1,000 million, and that means a billion.
see.
So you throw another 3 zeros onto a number, million, and then it becomes billion, B-I, 2.
Right.
I have 2 sets of 3 in front of 1,000. Trillion, 3. right? TRI, trillion.
Quad.
Then you get quadrillion, quad, and then quintillion, sextillion, 6, septillion, 7. And it keeps going all the way to that to decillion, which is a 1 with 33 zeros at the end. So now we know 33 because you start with 1,000 that has the 3. Then you add 3 more, and 3 more in groups.
Right. There's like a word for like a crazy number. Like
A Google.
A Google.
Yeah.
What is that?
And it's like it's a 1 with 100 zeros at the end of it.
Wow.
Well, and I think it's spelled like GOOGOL, but I do think that was the inspiration
Impetus.
for the company.
Google.
Yes.
Yeah,
the,
so dumb.
the search engine.
It's impossible to fathom the extent of that.
No,
But what's interesting,
it's crazy.
too, is, while Isaac is not an engine or a ship, he also has a lot of computations going at the same time, too.
He does, but
So-
Claire got in the way of those.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more on that later.
Yeah.
So everybody goes to John for dating advice, and he's a handsome guy. Seems to be smooth. Dated somebody with 2 different heads without
This
the other
is
head
true?
without the other head knowing, and left
It's
by
true.
choice, right? Because he didn't want to go camping. Remember that? So Isaac goes to John, specifically not Gordon, for dating advice. He said, "I would like to hear from John. You can."
Literally gives him the hand.
Yeah. So John's kind of the love doctor as far as setting people up.
I mean,
But
he's
a
also
little-
back, like, still hanging out with Ensign Turco.
Oh yeah, and Turco back in the bowling alley, but he's a little bit like Dr. Kevorkian with the breakup, man. That was just brutal.
He's so
You know?
wrong, too. Right?
So wrong. Yeah.
He's so
Immature.
So the
Yeah.
advice he gives him, just to recap, is if you don't want to hurt her feelings, just make her break up with you.
Just be a jerk.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting. A lot of people can give people advice on relationships, but nothing works the same except for, like, you can get a lot of relationship advice from a bunch of people, but still they're not in your relationship, right? So
Yes.
anyway, like, Lamar's just given him the info that he thinks he needs.
Right. And
Ugh.
yeah.
Backfire or success.
One or the other, but
Both.
man, it was I would
Brutal.
not give that same advice to my son. I would just say that. I'd say you're just gonna have to sit down, have a talk, and just power through it.
Well, and it's not unsurprising that this player dude character that we've been introduced to before is not someone that considers the other person's feelings all that much anyway. Like, so when the jerk is playing, that's the only person they're really treating like crap. And again,
Yeah.
there's like an argument that their self-esteem's low and they just don't like themselves. And, but they're fine in life, like, they're fine with everybody else, but they don't treat the person that they slept with very well. So
Yeah.
that tracks. And this whole episode is rife with stereotypes, and it's like it's kind of hard to watch as someone who's still in the dating world.
Yeah.
In an unsettled way, where it's like, and it's so delightful too, because like Isaac he didn't do anything wrong by over preparing and downloading her file
Right.
for the first date. That's just like anybody. He was nervous in his own way. He wanted to do well in his own way.
He was preparing, right? And proper preparation prevents poor performance, right? The 5 Ps?
Sure.
Proper preparation prevents
Prevents poor performance.
Yeah.
Hey, it happens to everybody, okay?
That's it. Hey, you don't need to brag.
Super common.
But I do love John's question. He was like, hey, man, who's the lucky lady or fella or object?
Yeah.
And then you got Lieutenant Dan stepping up, trying to help.
You can borrow my shirts anytime.
Like any time. And then the way those two ran to the bridge together, man, that was so funny. Just kind of elbowing each other, racing up the stairs, racing.
I mean, they're such a good bro pair. The thing about Lieutenant Dan, I feel like he's one of those characters that they just have a bunch of Post-its on a wall about awkward things that kind of person in real life would say. And they go, oh, this would work for this episode. Because he's just waiting for an opportunity to make someone his friend. And,
Yeah.
And it doesn't, you can borrow my shirt literally anytime. It's just
Anytime.
so sad. It's so sad.
Just for anything.
No
You
one
know what?
wants to be his friend.
And maybe he's just genuinely good-hearted. That's kind of what I thought about.
He
Maybe
is, but
he's just genuinely good-hearted.
I just don't think he's been accepted. I don't think he fits in. And, you know, that's not his fault, you know.
No, it's not. But keep trying, man. Keep trying, Lieutenant Dan. Keep putting yourself out there.
Well.
So it's the night of the big date, right? So
Right.
We got the symphony, and Issac shows up, and he's all dressed up, and he's got flowers, and Bortus and Clyden are at the symphony at the symphony as well. And I can't tell if the Mocklins are trying to be, kind of warlike and honorable like the Klingons, or if they're trying to be like emotionless like the Vulcans, or if they're just trying to be like Keiko and Miles O'Brien on Deep Space Nine, who are just always bickering and just always, having that sort of sitcomish type relationship where they're always just arguing about silly little things because married people, right?
Yeah, I mean, they would be the only people on this show that have a stable relationship, right? Mm-hmm. So, and we are to understand,
except for that one little douchey parents who. They had the parent-teacher conference meeting when when Marcus started drinking. They might still be together. I don't know.
Well, and also Kelly and Cassius are still together.
Yeah, good point.
So it's not like they're the only example of relationship, but we have seen them overcome the hardest part of the thing. So, I just think it's like we're at post the fallout, and maybe just them being able to be openly annoyed with each other is part of it. And the mustache did not look good on him.
It's funny. I remember my feelings about this episode when I watched it when it aired in 2019. And I remember specifically not liking the mustache and that whole, I guess, which is what is the B plot in this episode.
Sure, totally.
But I could not help but look at Bortus and not just giggle this whole episode. Not that I liked it. It was just funny. And, I work in a profession where there is a subset of people that do rock the mustache. Mm-hmm. Definitely an affectation that that Gordon hit on when he was like, look at him, authoritative, in charge.
I thought the fireman was more appropriate.
Yes, yeah.
Sounds like, look, you're ready to be a fireman.
Yep, that's the one right there. So Issac, like I said, he prepared. We mentioned this. He prepared for the first date. So let's say I was going to go on a date. I find myself single for whatever reason. Sorry, that's not making me happy. I'm just chuckling about it. And I need to go out on a date. So maybe I don't know what I would do. Honestly, I'd probably just look nice and try to be try to look as nice as I can and try to be myself. But if somebody were to, I don't know, scour social media to see if this individual likes cats or dogs or what their political views are and things like that. I mean, I guess you could do that. But would you bring it up? Would you be like, I know your favorite food because you took a picture of it, put it on Facebook?
You can't. You can't let them know that you looked at it.
Yeah.
There is I've experienced this a couple times where I'm like looking at a Facebook or Instagram page of the person that I'm interested in and accidentally like a photo from 2016.
Oh,
that'll happen. That's a real wake up call. So there's no going back from that one.
Right.
I know more about how to delete something like that or than anyone ever should. And yes, like did you see Crazy Rich Asians by any chance?
Yeah.
Okay, so the hill I will die on is you're telling me that woman never Googled her boyfriend for a year? and change? Never once? Let me put this guy's name in the Google and doesn't know he's insanely like royalty almost. So that's my one issue. I take issue with that.
100%.
But and when I bring that up to other people, they're like, I don't always Google them, or whatever.
I don't always Google people, but when I do,
I Google them. It's one of those things where it's like it's born of insecurity, and again, that's why I said Issac is just trying to have a good date in a sense. Like he is trying to impress her in some ways. He just doesn't know how to do this. So it's just like anybody who's insecure, nervous, like we all are, and wants to make sure that they don't say the wrong thing on a date.
Yes.
And
I think his mistake, his first date faux pas was much like my many first date faux pas. Many first dates. Not as many second dates for this guy.
Gotcha.
So
you're a professional.
Probably talking too much. Professional first dater. Yeah, I could do that. And I loved when Ed and Kelly were talking about baking the cake being spontaneous. I loved the two different versions of that story.
I would have loved to be a fly on the wall when they were recording it because it was so expertly, like she's just ribbing him, you know what I mean? But him like also taking it and
also trying to like salvage some dignity.
It's a delightful moment. We've talked about this 100 times. A really great example of how humor does differentiate itself from a Star Trek episode, but when used well. Right.
Used well and used, I think somewhat, obviously that was staged and I don't see two people unrehearsed being able to do something quite that refined. But it just, it reminded me of the older couples they interviewed when Harry Met Sally in that movie.
Sure.
And the old couples are sitting on the couch and we met and then I noticed her and he noticed me and no, she was looking at me and it was really, really cute to see those two do that.
Those are scripted though, those old people.
Yeah.
So, right?
Yes, I mean, I guess they are.
My assumption would be that those are scripted because I just can't believe true love exists. So one day, that's very funny though.
Yeah, no kidding. The bowling scene, John Lamar, actually Jay Lee, I would say has some pretty good bowling chops.
I don't know if that was his actual bowling skills,
but it looked. I looked to see if it was
edited or cut away.
Maybe a body double. Did not appear to be to me. Did not appear. Looked to see if maybe it was CGI bowling ball or something like that. Did not appear to be. What it was done, it was done very well. I brought my wife in. Her dad was a professional bowler back in the day. Wow. The old PBA, Pro Bowlers Association.
How cool!
And I said, "What do you think of the shot?" And she was like, "Yeah, he's good." And then she leaves.
Cool.
And I was like, "All right, you're gonna be internet famous. You're gonna be podcast famous after today."
She sure is. Queen tip. I used to bowl. I was on the bowling team for my high school, kind of like an unofficial club.
Yeah.
And it wasn't bad. I could like I actually bowled a few months ago, and I think I got to 120 or something like that.
That's
but
all right.
I used to get to 170 and stuff.
No, not me.
I'm not great, but my brother, who was 10 years younger than me, so I was 15 or 16 playing. So he was 6 or 7 max playing bowling without, bumpers. And he got a perfect game once.
Shut up.
He was just one of those kids who could hit righty or lefty, could pitch a fastball, catch. He just was excellent and took to bowling like a fish to water, really. Yeah,
well, Tiffany's dad and her 3 brothers have all bowled perfect games.
Very cool.
Which is good. And I think there's some sort of I don't know, whatever state they're from, Illinois state record or something with her dad bowling perfect games with all 3 of the boys, which I think has never happened
That's adorable.
Or since. So, yeah. It's not too bad. Any emotions when we saw Norm Macdonald pop up in the
It's sad.
environmental simulator? Yeah,
It's sad.
It was. I definitely, loved seeing it, and then that just that mixed emotions of him, not being with us anymore.
In a way, though, it's actually very nice to be able to immortalize him one more time on camera, especially in this delightful character he's playing.
Yep.
So I just, of course, it totally tracks that Yaffa would be like, she likes actual bodies. Let's go. And what it actually helped me realize, too, is that even though, I kind of knew when I first watched this episode the first time around, I kind of knew that was the actor who played Isaac. I just don't know him for his face. I was like, oh, for sure, that is the actor that plays Isaac then.
Yeah, Mark Jackson. Yeah, handsome guy.
I mean, also, what an interesting thing to actually see his process in bringing Isaac to life as a human. And that's what,
and that's when I noticed that when he that first scene when he said engaged simulation, I think were his words, and then from the floor up, he, became human.
Sure.
In form. And he just did that little tilt of his head Just so subtle, and Isaac, like I thought it was brilliant.
Oh, it's an amazing performance. And you do see the choices like you made an observation that we really don't get to see him obviously emote on his face, so his head does a lot of the work. But if you'll notice, a lot of his hands do the work too. So, but again, very lightly. But if you like, I was noticing this episode when he's as Kalon, he'll explain his emotions with slight gesticulations and the head movements. I don't know. It's just very, very well realized character work.
I think when you do things subtly and you have to pay closer attention, then they can be just as effective, if not more than over the top, overt facial and hand expressions. I was looking at his costume a little bit, and the way his, like arm costume kind of like butts up against the shoulder pad, it doesn't really look like he can move his arms up and down a whole lot.
Yeah, probably not. I think they probably made it so that he could as much as possible, but you're right. There is something that like keeps him really rigid.
Yeah. And
I think he also has like a back bow. Like it looks like a chair support that he has on his back. So he really is made to be super posturous in this.
Super posturous.
That's my new
That's the word of the day. I like
it. Super posturous.
Good deal. Well, anything else you want to talk about before we move on to the subjects we alluded to and kept our audience guessing?
All right, that's exactly right. Like any good first date. Let's do it. Let's move it on. All right, so we've come to the part of the show where we're going to explore the big ideas of the episode A Happy Refrain. And we're going to discuss the messages, morals, and meanings to see if the episode aligns with the Roddenberry Star Trek philosophy. So, Mike, where do you want to start?
Jessica, kind of the assumption, just kind of way back in the beginning of the episode when Kelly and Claire were chatting over their glass of Chardonnay, which replicated Chardonnay. I don't know where that falls on whether it's corked, screw-on, box, or replicated. I don't know where it falls in the hierarchy. But they had a glass.
Could have words. You don't know.
It could. And then Kelly said, Isaac is incapable of love, right? Incapable of emotion. Claire was like, oh yeah, no, I know he's a machine. How do they know? How do they know? I mean, he's a machine. Is it because he says? I mean, he seems is condescending. Is that an emotion? Is that probably not? Is belittling other people a sign of emotion? Like, it seems to me like just because something is a machine, an artificial intelligence, I don't think necessarily ruling out emotion is 100% truth. What do you think?
I mean, it's such a complicated conversation that I don't even know that I'm adequately capable of quantifying. I think it could maybe, but the thing that's making me think is we're so quick to ascribe animals as not having a soul.
Mm-hmm. Good
right?
point.
And I think that's just crazy for us to not assume that they're.
Yeah.
Just because their brain might be a little bit smaller and they might not be able to articulate words, to not assume that. I mean, we know that we put them through that they can experience fear and family feelings and protection and all that. But who are we to say that they don't have more complex emotions as well? And Claire says, "I know he's a machine." I think. But then yet she sees that he's got warmth towards her, right? Or considers her. So
he did bring her a banana.
Right. He's very considerate. So
yeah.
I don't know. I wonder if she's just trying to help herself be realistic about the situation.
Sure. I mean, you mentioned animals. I think that was something I never thought of. I was thinking of just a couple of different disparate points. One, I used to work at the door at a nightclub. And I was like by far the littlest guy working at this place. I mean, these guys were huge. So you'd walk up to a guy and kind of like punch him in the, punch him in the stomach or punch him in the arm
Bob. Yeah.
or something like that. And one of the guys said to me, actually was a pro wrestler for a while, like kind of very not famous, just because he's working at the door at a nightclub with me. So, but he goes, just because I'm bigger doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. So you sort of project onto other people what you think they can or cannot feel. I'd mentioned before that. My son has some mild spectrum issues, and a good friend of mine said, just because he doesn't, act a certain way, doesn't mean he doesn't feel a certain way. So that was sort of where I was going with that.
I think that's right. I think that it applies across the board. To project how you're feeling onto somebody else is like the least kind thing you can do, right? Mm-hmm.
And they get right into that. So, I think was it Kelly that asked Claire, is it possible that you're projecting what you're feeling onto Isaac? And they said, well, don't we all do that? And isn't it a reflection on ourselves? So if I want somebody to like me, and I think I'm likable, I might be like, hey, they like me. That means I'm likable. Or, like George Costanza in Seinfeld. He's like, sure, she would want me to like her if she liked me, but she doesn't like me. And then Elaine was like, what did your parents do to you? Oh. So that's kind of a reflection on how you view yourself, like what you're projecting onto other people. Like, of course they like me. Why wouldn't they? Like you're to me, seem very confident, and you've said similar things like that to me. Like, of course people like me. Why wouldn't they?
Totally. Or the converse is true. It's like, well, if that person doesn't like you, it doesn't matter. Like,
that's on them. That's a them problem.
Yeah, but that is, like, I'm also the first person to talk about, like, our brains are jerks and tells us things that we think are true, and our self-esteem can take a hit, or, like, we can be in tough places. So those feelings feel very real, even though your brain is lying to you or something.
Yes.
So it helps to have people that can get you out of that brain pattern of thought. Sometimes you need the therapist to help you out of that brain pattern
and give you that reality check. A good friend that can see things maybe
totally
from a distance. Relative distance.
And you don't want to rely on that totally, because you want to get to a place where you're building your self-esteem with your core values and self. But projecting this more what Isaac reminds me of is what it's like to be around an introvert. Introverts often experience people projecting their feelings onto them because they're not as emotional as extroverts. Yes. And so 9 times out of 10, when you're just looking into an introvert, you're reflecting back what your insecurities say. They're quiet because of this, because they've not given you a reason why they're quiet or what have you. So
there's a great meme of it's another hobby that I have is I like to mess around with old cars, and there's one where a guy's just kind of like looking off into the distance, and his wife's imagining, like, I wonder what's going on. He's been so distant lately. He's just not talking. We're not connecting the way we used to. I wonder if he's seeing somebody else. There's something's not quite right. And then you see the thought bubble from the guy, and he's like, man, my car's just not running right lately. And that's, Kelly said that about it.
About that, I'm just hungry.
Yeah, I'm just hungry. It's just so you project yourself onto somebody who's not making, maybe not speaking, not showing emotions, and trying to project onto that. But either way, man, after the using the the Lamar technique to get Claire to break up, she was upset, and she was genuinely upset. I think she was genuinely hurt. I think she's a fully formed enough person that it didn't affect her self-esteem or her sense of worth. But she was hurt by somebody, and that was totally that was a bummer.
To be used for sex is not a good feeling, and society tells us as women that that's pretty like one of the worst ways you could be treated. So the person was not being valued, let's put it that way.
Right.
So it's tough. So I don't know, I just relate a lot to that. I relate a lot to how she's feeling.
Yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying. I have not been in the position as, like you said, it's sort of a male-female societal thing. I think I've sadly probably been on the other side of that table. Not something, I'm proud of or would do again. But I think that what was nice about how well we know Dr. Finn, that she did know the risks when she went into this. Mm-hmm. And she was able to move on from them and show that she was going to put this behind her and move on. She got a new instructor for her son and was not going to let it change her or who she was. But she was still wise enough, like Ed said, to realize that Isaac was new at it, gave him a second chance. Kind of to prove himself.
Well, we want to hope the best, and we want to, she just set up boundaries, and when he crossed them, she didn't waver on them. And so when he made the effort to say that he had made a mistake, an understanding human will, give them a second chance. I think now if he continues over and over to just be a total dope,
Yes.
Or if someone continues to be a total dope in a relationship with you, then, and you still continue to forgive them, then are you actually holding to your boundaries? I think we all do kind of like being swept off our feet a little bit too, which is kind of what Isaac does,
Oh, he did. And I think that was the result. There was a conversation that I found interesting, and it was Ed giving advice to Isaac towards the end. And Ed said, hey, you've done almost everything there is in a relationship, but now you screwed up and you got to get the girl back.
Right.
And now Isaac kind of said, she told me no, and no means no, or she made her intentions clear. And Ed kind of said, well, she's smart enough to know that you're new to this and you would, you're trying to figure it out, and she's, capable of recognizing that mistakes can be made and mistakes can be accommodated for. I was kind of waiting for Ed to say, you got to do something a little bit stupid every day and something really stupid every once in a while, like the advice he gave to Cassius.
Men like women, women like men that are a little dumb.
Yeah,
right.
That are a little dumb. You got to screw up a little bit every day and a lot every once in a while. So yeah, Isaac screwed up. He did that grand gesture. It was the John Cusack standing with the boombox outside the window.
Totally.
It was definitely that kind of moment, and it did seem to win them over. I guess he's aware with the drops per minute on the control panel spec of the Orville, because they probably have things like that.
Sure.
And it worked out okay. And I loved the kind of shouting, Claire shouting to him like through the rain kind of scene. It was kind of so rom-com.
We're suckers, and it's the same thing in every movie ever. They're running through the airport. It's raining. Mm-hmm. There's a speech. But man, if someone were to do that for me, I'd be like, okay.
Yeah.
It's delightful.
Mm-hmm. So there's yeah, and Isaac, I mean, like I said, maybe not emoting in a particular way, but his programming was malfunctioning, probably because he was distracted, maybe allocating, resources, RAM and what have you, mm-hmm. at thinking about what's going on with Claire and making some mistakes there. And he said, so she said, what you're trying to say is you're better with me than without me. And I was just thinking of Jack Nicholson in, what was that one with Helen Hunt?
As Good as It Gets?
As Good as It Gets, yeah.
Okay, I've never watched it.
Yeah, and I don't even want to try to attempt at Nicholson, but he said, what I'm trying to tell you is you make me a better man. Oh. And I guess that's, that's all it takes. You make me want to be a better man, he said.
You're
you
better
make me want to be a better man.
Yeah. You're better with me than you are without me. It's what I love is that Seth MacFarlane wrote this episode, and again, he might have his writers room or whatever, but it's a definitely perfect romantic love story. And mm-hmm. I think, yes, you're right that it has some episodes, it has some similarities to some Star Trek, and it's not the first, you know what I mean? Like, there are things that we've kind of seen like this story before.
Oh yeah, this is as old as it gets. Yeah, this is.
But it's also very unique. I don't know, something about this episode really just this, and you know, the other Krill episode with what's her face when
Talea? Michaela McManus.
Yes, when we see that she's not, oh my God, was not prepared.
That's okay. So
the two most romantic episodes of the series have made me love this show even more.
Okay, now are you talking about the one where we find out that Michaela McManus, Lieutenant Janelle
is actually
Tyler. Is actually that
Tyler
was
Nothing
Left on Earth Excepting Fishes.
Right,
was the name of that one. And then the previous episode was Krill. There was kind of a season separated two-parter.
Sure.
They were great. So I see what you're saying. I see why you like this episode so much, and I like it too. It's a good sort of romantic exploration. If I can kind of look into, segue a little bit into meanings, morals, and messages.
Yeah, let's do it.
I love the line that Claire said, scary is good. Sometimes it's electrifying being afraid. It means you're out of your comfort zone. And it's so important for all of us, if possible, to get out of our comfort zone, learn a new thing, meet new people, expand your life. Because you know what, man? As we get older, our world tends to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And at some point, all it's going to be is a freaking hospice bed. So if you can beat back those walls a little bit while you can still, move around, and you have still some life left in you, man, get out of your comfort zone, push those walls back, continue to grow, continue to learn, continue to meet new people, continue to challenge your expectations and your preconceived notions, and just continue to live life. And I think that's, summed up very well in scary is good. It's electrifying to be afraid. It means you're out of your comfort zone. And I think that's a kind of a major theme of the show.
My brother said to me recently, if thinking about it makes you afraid, then that means you're supposed to do it. And obviously, to some extent, right? Like,
I ain't swimming to the sharks anytime soon.
That's like, you actually need to do that. But if you extrapolate that and put it into a philosophical sense about like your life, I'm afraid to send out that resume because I feel like I'm good enough. Or I'm afraid to, ask that girl out or whatever. Even if you get rejected in whatever way for the thing that you wanted, that feeling is guiding you towards the next true north of your life.
Yeah.
It's hard to see that until you've gotten past that point, too.
Yeah, the next step in your evolution. So definitely don't be afraid to jump from that one very comfortable, safe rock, in that river you're trying to cross, to the next one. We talked about workplace romances before, probably in Krill and Nothing Left on Earth Excepting Fishes and Kelly and Cassius and, that kind of thing. So I don't know what the Planetary Union's policies are, or if they even have any. I think it's kind of cool that Claire went to speak to Kelly. I mean, I think it was woman to woman. I think it was also
it was like advice session.
Yeah, and I think it was also a little bit of like, hey, you're FO on the ship, second in command. I think you're going to know if I'm violating any kind of rules here, or if I'm treading dangerously. So there was that. I looked into a little bit of research on workplace romances. There was a Harris poll conducted in 2017 with over 800 full-time workers from across the United States, different company sizes, different industries. 36% of workers reported dating a coworker. Okay. 22% of workers dated somebody who was their boss at the time. So that's, between 1 in 4 and 1 in 5. They broke the attitude differences down by generation, which is one way to do it.
Okay.
Because, like, if you're Gen X, you're Gen X for life, right? If you're a millennial, you're a millennial for life. If you're a boomer for life. But I think those attitudes are going to change over the course of your life. So what they said was 84% of millennials who are 23 to 39 as of 2019. So right now, 25 to 41-ish. 84% of millennials said they would engage in a romance with a coworker. Only 36% of Gen X said the same thing. And only 29% of boomers, but boomers at the time were 55 to 75 years old, probably not really in the dating scene anyway. So
Sure.
I kind of look at this and I wonder, like, I bet the millennials, that 84% is going to go down, by the time they're 30, 40, 50 years older.
That's a really good point, especially as
Yeah.
the workplace itself is changing.
It is.
And we're not in a workplace or what have you. I mean,
And
it makes so much sense to date someone that you're working with. I mean, in the sense that, like, I don't vilify someone for it because you're around someone and shared experiences.
I married somebody I worked with.
Well, there you go. Like, it's
Yeah.
it's mere exposure effect. It's shared interests. It's shared daily life. So
Right.
it all makes sense,
Yeah, it does. And I think that also maybe the older group in that sample size, as either one, not in the dating pool anymore, or maybe they've learned a valuable life lessons previously that they
I don't give humans that much
they didn't know.
credit.
You don't think they'll learn, adapt, evolve?
Not very much, no.
Yeah. 71% of millennials believe a workplace romance would have positive effects. However, only 40% of millennials that had an actual workplace environment reported no negative effects. So 60% said there were negative effects.
So
even
you're
though
telling me-
71% said there were none.
So you're saying that we actually just exist in a fantasy world.
I think sometimes there's a difference between how we feel and the numbers that are in front of us.
It's true.
Right. I was watching Neil deGrasse Tyson in Cosmos, which was also produced by Brandon Braga and Seth MacFarlane.
Right.
And he said scientists have preconceived notions, and they have prejudices, and they have, ideas that are wrong, and they have all other kinds of baggage that they bring to the table. And the process, the scientific method is designed to, filter out all of those things. Mm-hmm. So we may feel like something's a great idea or feel something is a certain way, but then when you actually collect the data, it might be different. And I think that's where things break down, because people look at the numbers and go, well, I don't know about that.
Well, and if you look at the numbers with someone going on a date with a robot, it would probably be 0% success rate.
Yeah.
So all the odds are against Claire in this, but somehow they surpass the odds.
I
And
think
that's what
she's
true
willing
love's
to give it a
supposed
try. And if we know anything about Issac, he's a rock solid guy, man. Nothing's gonna change that.
You don't need to brag about it, Mike.
No sparks are flying.
He's rock solid. Well, I think love is always going to align with the Roddenberry Star Trek philosophy, because you can exhibit love in so many different ways. And I really personally love that we got to see something that we don't normally see be in love. I don't know. Just think it's special.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. I mean, personally, I think it falls a little bit short of an episode like If the Stars Should Appear for Me, which is kind of like a global overview of how people process information in history and things like that. But Seth wanted to make a classic Hollywood love story, and that he did, and it was accomplished. But the Orville and Star Trek and the Roddenberry philosophy, it's not about the future. It's about us. It's about us right here and right now. And it gives us a chance to be exposed to and to think about situations we might find ourselves in. And then we can think about it from an ethical point of view and decide, what kind of people do we want to be going forward? Do we want to be people who are afraid to get out of their comfort zone, or people who challenge their preconceived notions? Do we want to be people who let their self-esteem be affected by someone else's inability to love? Or do we want to be people who recognize our own value and self-worth based on how we feel about ourselves? And those are the questions that this and the issues that this episode dealt with and made me think about. And I think that's why it aligns very well with the Roddenberry Star Trek philosophy.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it, Mike, and I always love hearing your takes on these. Mission Log the Orville is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Executive producer Rod Roddenberry. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is podcast.roddenberry.com.
Join us next time on Mission Log the Orville as we discuss the episode Deflectors.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.